Good morning, everyone, from actually a rather nice Auckland, and welcome to all our new viewers. Lovely to have you along, and of course to all our wonderful regulars, a little bit of a community in some ways. So good morning to you all, and welcome to Solid Ground, where we talk the issues of the day, things that have caught my eye, and try to talk about them from a solid ground. Hence the title of the show, a live show. So if you're on Facebook or YouTube, particularly on the Family First channel, so Family First YouTube or Facebook, know that you can comment live here. And actually, I've already seen questions come in. Harrison's asking me a question about MAGA hats and rainbow pins, so I will get to that, Harrison, a little later in the show, but an excellent question. But just know your comments, like Carl's and others here, come through to me live. So if you've got any thoughts on what we're discussing, let me know. If, like Harrison, you've got other questions, well, put them in the chat. I will do my best to reply, as I keep stressing as I'm saying good morning here to everyone, or putting up their comments. I'm more than happy to try and engage what's on your mind rather than what has simply caught my eye. And I think a rather inspirational quote and start there from Dean, although it does sound from Rosie it's a little wet down in Taupo. But good morning to you all. Look, quite a big show today insofar as lots of topics, from obviously what's happening around the New Zealand police, more coming out around the BBC and its fraudulent behaviour, which I would argue also reflects on New Zealand media, not only how they chose to report things, but also the overall connection and, in effect, guys, the denial of what's happening in an attempt to blame everyone else but themselves. So quite a lot there, but I thought I would start with something which is going to be absolutely confusing when I can find it to the woke, the progressives. This is an issue here in the United States which is, as I say, going to be confusing many people, particularly various activists, because on one hand they cannot stand Donald Trump or his administration, and yet on the other hand the Trump administration, has just made it easier for women to access HRT or hormone replacement therapy. I suspect this puts a lot of the progressive left, or the woke, again, however we want to call them, in quite a bind, because this is actually a very good decision, one that's been a long time in coming. So they'll be celebrating that. So hormone replacement therapy, as most will understand, particularly helps with the likes of menopause. So this is now going to make it so much easier in the United States to access. Yet the conundrum for them is, of course, that this has been done by the Trump administration, and they're not allowed to like anything Trump does. So I think a very good move, actually, by the likes of the Trump administration here. I think a lot of women will be rightly pleased. My only other observation of this particular news story is you haven't really heard much about it down here. And I suspect part of it, of course, is this is something to do with the United States. But I'd make the further point, because, of course, women here in New Zealand and others use hormone replacement therapy. The media here don't want to give any credit to the likes of Donald Trump and his administration. But good news for women in the United States, still an issue here in New Zealand. I know when I was in Parliament, and it's still carried on, and gosh, I've been out of Parliament for a good 2 years now, women in particular gaining access to hormone replacement therapy, very, very difficult. In fact, I think we're often running out of supplies in this country. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that. I think it is a good news story. Hopefully it's something which flows over into New Zealand. But as I say, I'm sure it's a terrible conundrum for the progressive and the woke, because they will be delighted in the decision, but not in who has made the decision. So again, I just thought that was interesting. And then we've got, I know Bob talked about this one the other day. This is another vilification case that's in the Australian courts. So vilification, of course, is where you're suggesting that your actions or your words is vilifying or strongly hurting the feelings of another. In this case, a woman, her name is Jasmine, I think. I might be having people mixed up here. I don't know why names of these cases are so similar. But one is a breastfeeding consultant, a nurse for many, many years, and a biological woman. The person taking the vilification case is a biological male who has transitioned to be, or to believe, that he's a woman. To confuse things, he is married to a woman, has had a baby, their baby, because he's a biological man. But he decided, the biological man, he decided that he wanted to breastfeed, that somehow it was going to be his role to take the child away from the biological mother and go through the palaver of trying to create breast milk. So you've heard that right, and it possibly is a little bit confusing, if not sickening, because clearly the interests of the child are being put a distant second, third, fourth, and fifth to the bizarre desires of these parents. As I say, he is a biological male who thinks he's a woman. His wife is a biological woman and has just had a baby. But both of them have decided that she, the mother, is not going to breastfeed. No, that the father, in effect, is going to. And to do this, he's had to take all sorts of drugs to try and make a male chest lactate. And even there, I'm slightly resistant to use the word lactate because there is no good evidence that actually it is the milk that children need. It's just a secretion. And I know this is possibly a heavy topic in the morning, but this is the level of absurdities that we are at, and particularly around this trans activism, because nothing highlights the harm of children more than a case like this. Basically, mentally disturbed parents who are compromising their child's health. All I might add for social media glory, because the father, who thinks he's a woman, has been spending a lot of time promoting this supposed breastfeeding journey. It's absurd. I just keep coming back to that word. But this nurse, and I think, again, apologies, the Jennifer and the Jasmine mixes it up. So the lady in the picture, a biological woman, has been a nurse breastfeeding consultant for many, many years, has come out and just said, look, this is wrong, this is ridiculous, men can't breastfeed, and what is expressed from his chest is not breast milk. Well, she's the one now in trouble. She's been hauled before the vilification courts because no one is to question this trans ideology. No one is to question the safety of the child. As you've heard me say many, many times, bad arguments, particularly that come from the progressive side. You can get absurd arguments from the conservative side too. Bad arguments require coercive force to maintain themselves. And you see this with the basic trans or gender ideologies in New Zealand, or even around the likes of climate change. Basically, if you can't argue with reason or with science, you just use force. And that's what this case is all about here. Basically, the vilification case is to silence a biological woman who knows what she's talking about and wants, if you will, the best interest of the child. Again, I just find it amazing that we're even having to have these discussions in modern day society. The level of absurdity to believe that a biological male can breastfeed is crazy, let alone the harm that it does to the child. But as I say, I put the blame personally squarely at the feet of both the parents, the biological man who thinks he's a woman and his wife, that she would actually go along with this. There's something, well, I suppose we're dealing with delusion. But the good news is the breastfeeding expert has been well represented by a guy actually called John Stenhoff. Why I mention his name is you can jump onto the YouTube channel of Family First and look up the interview I did with him, not on this particular case, but in the broader case that he's doing. And as Rosie notes, I mean, this is the heart of it, and she nails it, as many of you have done. And I'm going to put this one up here too, because I as Foo Dogs Trucking knows, I love a good double entendre, so I think that's is good. Catherine's right as well. I mean, basically it's a chemical cocktail. I mean, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And I just keep coming back to that. And actually, Muddy Waters has put up a good, Peter Boghossian. I interviewed him as well a while back. He's an American academic, fantastic person. And as Muddy Waters is noting, was talking to Mia Hughes of Den Spec. So look, very much check that out. And actually, I'll be following up with this woman. And again, I apologise to you that I can't actually. You can probably read the screen better than I do. I have a very small laptop screen, so while I can see it's the Jennifer Buckley Jasmine Sussex slide, I can barely read any of the text. So look, I just thought I probably spent more time on that than I expected, but that's fine. Look, this is my on point this morning. This is my Substack that's just being published, but I've primarily got it here because I think that the big news here in New Zealand at the moment is what's happening with some of the police. And I really want to stress that word, some. What's happening with the police at the moment? Police commanders, obviously now a disgraced former deputy commissioner, that's McSkimmings. He's the one who was found to have vile objectionable material in his possession and on the police system. So he's lost his job. But in recent, probably the last 24, 36 hours, it's come to light how some very senior commanders, including now the former Commissioner, Andy Costa, effectively went out of their way to protect him around an illicit relationship or an affair that he had, and that this person, this woman, who was at least 20 years his younger, almost 20 years his younger, was given a job in police. It all went south and sour. She got very, very upset about it, was really putting quite a number of allegations about his behaviour to police through emails and on social media channels, even emailing, we're told, the Minister of Police's office. Police didn't investigate it. It seems even the likes of Andrew Costa, said the Commissioner, went out of their way to deflect what was happening. And then the kicker in all of this is that they then used the Harmful Digital Communications Act to prosecute the woman raising the concerns. This just reeks and stinks to high heaven of a corruption, sadly, at the very top of our police. And as I noted in my Substack, this must be a real kick in the guts to the men and women serving on the front lines of the police, who I have enormous respect for. These police officers work extremely hard and in very dangerous environments. And look, I'm the son of a police officer. My late father was a cop. My uncle was a cop. Lots of my friends are cops. So I have an enormous respect for the work they do. And I think I can say, because I've been talking to some of the police that I know over the last 24 or so hours, this really hurts. Not only is it tarnishing all of them, but it's their most senior commanders, including, as I say, Andy Costa, who will be known to many of you. He was Jacinda's appointment. He was seen as quite a weak commissioner, and a little bit erratic as well. I can think of the protests at Parliament, of how they of how they sought to handle things on day one, which I thought was inept, and then eventually the rather aggressive end, which is not all on the police's side by any means, but it was a very messy end. And look, he presided over a police force that I think in many ways lost its way, and I think we begin to see now a little bit of why, because I think sadly Mr. Costa lost his way. It was clear, it seems clear from the reports that are coming out, that he was preferring to protect his friend or his colleague, that's that Javon McSkimmings, a disgraced former deputy commissioner, and basically pushing away what should have been investigations about what his former lover was saying. Now, it's still a little bit messy. I understand that she is still being charged. This is his... God, it all gets so complicated, doesn't it? His former lover is still being prosecuted under the Harmful Digital Communications Act because of, I suppose, what they will put as vexatious and aggressive emails at police who are investigating things. So look, like so many things, it's possibly not black and white, but I will say I'm very concerned at how the Harmful Digital Communications Act is being used. The fact that senior police have used it to, in effect, silence this woman raising complaints, that police have used it not to enable investigation of the accusations, but to shut down the accuser, again, the woman who was involved with McSkimmings. This all sits alongside the wider issues of the Harmful Digital Communications Act. As a journalist, Portia Mao, a friend of mine, she's been hauled through the courts because a CCP stooge decided to use the law to try and silence her. Now, she's fought the battle and she's won, but this is very much a case where the process is the punishment. So it has to stop. And my plea to government actually is to get rid of and repeal the Harmful Digital Communications Act. It's something I write about in my Substack, but it needs to go. It is a law that is not fit for purpose. I was there when the then national government passed it. The caucus, the majority of the caucus agreed it to go forward, and so you'll find from my voting record that I voted for it. But I can tell you, it was something I did not like at the time and opposed. The idea of harm is such a nebulous concept. What is harm? Who defines it? I could see the problems ahead. Better be clear, I couldn't see these particular problems. But there was always a sense that laws like this, even with the best of intentions, bring about bring about bring about unfortunate results. And this is a very good example of it. NZ Knitter, I'm just seeing there's lots of comments. Yeah, lots of respect for the police at how they acted at the Albert Park. Yeah, I thought, if I've got the right location, absolutely, I thought that again was atrocious. I would put a lot of the blame at the level of command. It seems, I mean, I wasn't there. I assume this is the Posey Parker protest at Albert Park, and apologies if I've got the wrong one. But even there, police commanders seem to send in police officers, particular police officers, who were siding with the trans activists and hence just stood back. Again, that is not good policing. So we clearly have a growing problem here, and I think the real part which will hurt, if you will, is that this is some of our most senior commanders. And so there's still an enormous number of questions. Again, who exactly, and media actually, give them credit where credit's due, are doing a good job of ferreting that out. It looks like a lot of the police involved with this case, or the lack of the case, strictly speaking, have resigned or moved on. Obviously, Andrew Coster has stepped down from his role. He was put into a tidy role at the Social Investment Agency, so very well paid, very cushy. But there are questions there too. I mean, how was none of this found out and vetted about his behaviour? I saw an article in the news this morning. How did actually McSkimming, so again, that's the guy who's now been through the courts, found guilty with all those vile, objectionable materials. How did he get a security clearance? You know, our spooks, our SIS would have done a review of him and his behaviour, and yet somehow he got the highest security clearance in the country. So I suppose I'm trying to be careful here. I don't want to be throwing mud around too widely, but I think there are many more questions to be asked, not simply of why police commanders or some police commanders chose to act the way they did, but who else knew, and why also did the systems not pick up any of this. I mean, when you think of this guy McSkimmings and what he was doing and saying, his proclivity around women, seems to be what this X is saying, must have been known about, and yet he was able to become a deputy commissioner. In fact, it seems that Costa wanted him to be the commissioner. So look, there's really major problems there. Let's hope we get to the absolute bottom of it. But as you can imagine, it is all quite disturbing that we've even got to this place. So I'm seeing lots and lots of comments. I see DD's mentioning this repeat of the Clint Ruckard and Louise Nicholas. I think it is to a degree. There's part of me thinks DD, and to others it's potentially worse, but it's certainly, and I suppose ranking the sort of abuse is probably not the fairest thing to do, just that the corruption goes so far to the top. But unfortunately, we have been here before. This is going to take a lot of political will to sort out. I'm actually being pleased, first and foremost, of those police officers that did step up. This has eventually come to light because a few detectives said, hold on a moment, something's not right here. They put the integrity of police ahead of one of their colleagues. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that they did, and they are to be commended. As I write in the Substack, they're the best of our police. And so, yeah, I can see, again, lots of comments, people from the Wellington process, Posey Parker. Yeah, unfortunately, I think, again, it's probably at the command level than the police on the ground, although you're always going to have the odd bad fruit in there, are making decisions which undermine the integrity of police and the perception of their neutrality. And that's certainly, one of the issues. You might have seen, actually, I did a podcast a while ago about, it's called the Rainbow Laces situation in the UK. Long and short, police, actually I'm mixing two cases up, but it's the same lawyer. Long and short, UK police have been told they shouldn't be part of the likes of pride parades because they are taking a political stance on issue when they need to be and remain neutral. And I actually think there's a case to be fought here in New Zealand around that. I think our police are becoming too compromised in a number of areas. Obviously, this horrific situation we have here at the moment around McSkimmings, but as people have mentioned, how the COVID protests ended, what happened at the Posey Parker rally, I would think too, was it last year when you had the big hikoi that police were actually actively in support? This is a problem. This is a major problem for a police force that we want to trust. I'm just going to return to this to finish up because it was one question that came through, and apologies if I've missed others, but This viewer is asking why you can't wear a MAGA hat in public, and it then says, but when the left wear rainbow pins, it's not. So it caught my eye because one of the strangest things in society is the inconsistencies. And so this is much directed to Harris and anyone else, but I think these are they're small things, but what frustrate people because it doesn't appear right or just, certainly doesn't seem like equal treatment. The reason is because basically I would argue the progressive left really try very, very hard to ensure only their symbols, their beliefs get airtime. So we see that in the media. This was the big issue coming out of the BBC at the moment in the UK, but we've had it here in New Zealand. You've heard me talk about it extensively. The left will censor what they don't like. They won't have those discussions in public, and they'll do all they can to shut them down. It's the same with symbols. They're more than happy to push their agenda with their various badges and lapel pins and flags, but they don't like, in this case, MAGA. I mean, even in New Zealand, it's got, in some ways, little to do with us. But what they do is make it a threatening environment. The desire to stop people wearing certain hats with certain messages is, in a sense, a form of thuggery. So they're hoping by threats, by trying to rip hats off people, attacking them, and then promoting that it'll scare people off. And perhaps that's the quickest way for me to answer the question, Harrison, is they are trying to create an environment of fear. And so, look, personally, I think people do have to be careful around what they choose to say and wear, but I don't think we should be scared of our opinions on whatever that is. But it is inconsistent. It is certainly a double standard, but I'm afraid to say that's how the progressives, by and large, operate. And you can see in New Zealand, in Australia, in America, in the UK, it's the progressive left that are part of the violent protests, right from literally knocking people's hats off to threatening them on airplanes, right through to the big protests we see where they are waving their flags and burning places down. So, yeah, it's all a little nuts. I'm just jumping back to the last comment. Others are talking about other pins that they could wear. So, yeah, ultimately, we do see the inconsistency. We just got to make our particular choices of what is prudent or not. So I suppose the last bit of advice, Harrison, is we be careful, all of us, around how we act. I mean, it would be great if it was a completely free country, but we've also got to be aware. That there are, unfortunately, some nasty people out there. And Kiwi Paul, and I'll end on this note here: blue ties for National and red ones for Labour. To lighten things as we finish, that was very much the case. I mean, granted, me wearing a red tie would look terrible, but there is sort of an unwritten code in the Parliament. There's no rules, it better be clear to people. But you will see that, the National MPs lean towards the bluer ties and Labour to the red. It's sort of quite fun. And of course, New Zealand First, more of the darker blues and blacks and so on. So it is quite funny. Guys, I'll leave it there. As I say, Substack that I've written is available. That's the one on the police and everything that's happening. Of course, we've got political playback tonight. Bob and I will be back at 5 o'clock talking the political issues of the day. Undoubtedly, we'll be talking around the police, but we'll also be talking about the continued implosion of the Māori Party. Obviously, they've expelled 2 MPs, and a whole lot of other MPs haven't even bothered turning back up to Parliament. As with the start of the show, you can always access these shows online afterwards. You can listen to them on Spotify, and you can read our commentary. Don't forget, of course, Bob is busy doing his Substacks as well. He's just done a really good one on the BBC. And you can always jump on to get all and any of our content whenever you need. But in the meantime, I am going to call it a day and leave you to, well, where it is sunny, a lovely sunny day, and I can see from others here, wet days, leave you to your umbrellas. But thanks for joining me here on Solid Ground. I will see you again next Tuesday. Otherwise, I will see you tonight on Political Playback.